everybody. Great to see you. Oh, well, thank you. Thank you.
There are a couple.
I know it's a Monday morning.
Only a couple people. Yeah.
You know, it's great to be here at Concordia. As they say, long-time listener, first-time caller. And this is a great conversation. I was just listening to Gallup, thinking a bit about how much work they've done, as well as Edelman and KPMG and others to monitor trust globally. You know, and I think it's fair to say we're living in a bit of a trust recession right now.
That's a good way
Everything from, everything from who's to blame for the price of eggs up to, can I trust that this 10% tariff is going to hold for my country? And obviously throughout it, technology is both a tool and a weapon, as your boss, your boss, Brad Smith, has said. They got a lot of mileage out of that book,
does.
Right?
We keep getting mileage out of it.
Yeah, right, exactly. And, you know, as AI diffuses into everything from healthcare to election integrity, I think this question becomes more and more critical. Teresa, Hutson, it is great to see you.
Good to see you.
You know, you've been at Microsoft for a long time, about 16 years. And this conversation has obviously evolved. And I'm curious first, level setting on how you view trust in technology and what do you think is important within that space as a company as big as Microsoft, and then how AI is impacting it.
That's a lot of questions all at once. So let me try and get at those. Remind me if I've missed something.
Sure.
So it's interesting, we were sitting backstage and I was listening to the Gallup piece and thinking about how much technology infuses in all institutions. And so that's why it's really important that we get it right if we're building technology that the world uses. And Microsoft has thought about technology and trust for a really long time. The way I think about it is that people won't use your technology if they don't trust it. And so the thing to think about right now is, how does AI change what we think about and how we think about trust? And so, you know, we've always thought about, for a long time, privacy and security, but there are new questions that are coming up because AI has new capability. And so I spend a lot of time thinking about the people who use the technology, because ultimately it's the people who adopt the technology that you need to think about. And so what are the big questions on their minds? And, you know, clearly for parents, it's, you know, do I want my kids to use it? Do they need to use it because it's going to help them in their future? But do I want them to use it? What are the ways in which I'm scared of the way the technology will be used by my kids? You know, when you think about trust in institutions, if we're talking about technology and deep fakes, can I even trust what I see? So how do we really build in trust signals into the AI so that people are starting to actually trust the foundational technology? And that sits with us. I mean, a lot of that sits with the people who are building the technology.
I mean, so how do you get specific about, you know, particularly the issue of deepfakes or AI-generated content?
Yeah, and I think, you know, there are layers of this, right? So what are the responsibilities of a company? And so for deepfakes, you know, what are the what do we build, and then how do we build it? You know, we've done a lot of work on content provenance, just putting into the technology a signal that isn't making a statement about whether the underlying content is true or untrue, because that's very complicated, but rather this was generated by AI, so you're aware as you're interacting with the content. And so that's built into our tools and our, you know, AI image generation and stuff like that. So, because I think it's like a lot of what people are sort of struggling with is like, how do I know even what to trust? Can I trust what I see? Can I trust what I hear? And, you know, there's a lot of work to do about being a trusted speaker. That's different. That's, you know, goes to all these institutions that are struggling with trust. But there are pieces that we can build into technology. And then I think a related piece is really focused on transparency. Are we being open about what we're doing and when we get it wrong? Because that's super important. And when you think about building trust, if you're not transparent about, you know, kind of what has gone wrong, where are the use cases where you've had to change your approach, where are the places where there have been requests for data, like all of that stuff goes into building the trust in the institution, and then for us, ultimately, the technology.
That leads me to one particular controversy that Microsoft has endured since about August, when a Guardian report came out, and even a few months prior to that as discussions grew about how the Israeli government was using particular Microsoft cloud capabilities, Azure, surveillance, allegedly using phone conversations to target individuals. First question that would come to my mind, that did come to my mind, is how does that happen? And where are you at right now as a company in this investigation, and what the next steps will be?
Yeah, so the investigation's still ongoing. I mean, look, the challenge when you put technology out in the world is you don't necessarily know how people will use it. You can put in place guardrails in how it can be used, you can put in place oversight, and you can put in place contractual terms. And so when The Guardian reported this, we were in an ongoing conversation with the reporter, and it turned out that some of what he was telling us was he had really good sources. We could see that there was some thing we should look into. So we did kick off an investigation with an independent law firm, Covington and Burling. And it's ongoing, but as we said at the time, if the unit of the government, of the Israeli government, is using this technology to conduct mass surveillance on civilians, that would violate our terms of service. And so we will take steps to, end the violation. And then, of course, your question is, how did that happen? And so I think the follow-on thing we have to do, and we are going to do and are already starting, is, okay, what additional layers of governance do we need? What additional, what additionally do we need to look for from our customers to make sure that they are complying with us? Because it's not really a statement about what the customer is or isn't doing. It's really a statement about what business we want to be in. Mm-hmm. And there's some business we want to be in, and there's some business we don't want to be in. We don't need to make a statement about the whole world and whether it's business they should be in. But we can draw boundaries on what business we will be in. And that's what we would do here.
One more question on it, because I think
please.
that there are clearly both external trust issues, but probably some internal ones too, and we've read about those. So how is the company approaching those two tracks of rebuilding trust?
So internally, this has clearly been top of mind for our employees, and it's been top of mind for our employees for a long time. This specific use is, we had some very, again, specific allegations to investigate, but, since October 7th, we've had conversations in the workplace about the conflict, and they've been ongoing conversations, and they continue with our various employee groups, our Jews at Microsoft, our Palestinians and allies at Microsoft, our Middle East and North Africa employees in Microsoft, and then the broad range of other employees at Microsoft that don't participate in those groups. So there is conversation ongoing. There have been a couple of situations where employees have not complied with workplace policies, and so we have terminated people for that, but not for what they were saying or their beliefs or anything like that. It was more just the behavior. So that is going to require, though, a lot more conversation with employees to continue to invite concerns. We will kick off a new process so employees can tell us if they have specific concerns about the ways our technology is being built or deployed. And then, you build on that with the external conversations. Who are the people who really are paying attention and need us to reassure them that we take it seriously, that we have drawn lines in what businesses will be in? What do they continue to need to see from us on, this kind of, again, goes back to transparency. But all of this is just, actually, I think, just pausing and saying, okay, did we get something wrong? Because we need to actually just confront that if we did. And then figure out what we would need to do to fix. And I think that's important for all institutions generally. It's certainly important when you're building technology that can potentially serve the world, if you're not willing to kind of take the pause and say, okay, what did we get right and what do we need to do differently?
And I'm sure that kind of introspection and transparency is not only the right thing to do, which is first and foremost, but has a bottom line impact. I mean, sort of explain a little bit about how you approach trust as a business necessity.
Yeah, I think sometimes trust, it comes across as like marketing terms and like it's fluffy and PR and whatever. But fundamentally, if you're really talking about whether people use your technology, it's a business proposition. Do they trust it? Do they want to use it? Do they want their institutions to use it. They want their organizations to use it. They want their children to use it. And so if you're not actually thinking about the ways in which people use technology and distrust technology, or potentially distrust technology, you're going to lose some business. So it just makes good sense, actually. It's like just being really pragmatic. You want to be a trusted provider. And in part, too, because of the business we're in, it's a lot of enabling other organizations, other companies, other people. And so it is really important that they trust us.
Mm-hmm. There's been such an evolution happening. I would say really for me, it started with the pandemic and you know, in 2020, the way that companies, big corporations, had to confront geopolitical realities. Not that they hadn't always, but I think it was kind of put on steroids, frankly. And it's been this evolving process. And so now, when you start to think about AI and how it's not only diffusing, but it's literally starting to saturate into everything from healthcare practices and data collection to, you know, election integrity and how we conduct our elections. It seems to me like it puts the multinational corporations into a geopolitical spotlight that they weren't necessarily in a decade ago. And how does that change how you approach the business?
Well, I will say it's 100% the hardest time it's ever been at the company. And the geopolitics do make a huge difference. And, you know, I think we've been using this phrase that we want to create digital stability in a world where there's a lot of instability. So what do we need to do to listen to the concerns that people have? And the concerns really can range from, you know, are you actually going to make this technology available in our region, to, oh, we're really worried that you're going to shut off our services based on some political point of view or even an order from a government. And so really getting out there, I mean, we're around the world, and we've been around the world. We're 50 years old. So we've been doing this for a while. And so it's really important for us to stay, we're in 55 capitals around the world. We have to stay there, listen to what we hear from the governments there so that we're serving the needs of the government and that in the places where we operate, which are around the world. So, you know, that's part of it. And then there's this bigger question too around, you know, are we making sure that the technology is, you know, diffused and available around the world to people? You know, this, you know, we were talking about the statistics. What is it? 1.5?
1.2 billion,
1.2 billion
estimated, yeah, that are using AI on some regular basis, but that means 7 billion are not. Right. And yeah, that was going to be my next question. We actually have a couple coming in from the audience. I'm going to try to get to one or two.
Okay.
But you know, in the meantime, to think a little bit about the global South, or the majority of the world, really, right, is what we're talking about. How do you make sure this diffusion of AI, growth of AI economy, doesn't further divide the haves from the have-nots when it comes to economies, and this doesn't sort of become globalization 2.0?
Yeah, and it's really hard because there is, you know, an electricity divide, and then you build on top of that, and you have like a infrastructure divide, and you have a connectivity divide, and you have a skills and literacy divide, and you have a language divide, and so all of those things stack. And we have to, I think, as a company, think about each of them, but we can't think about them alone. I mean, we have to think about from a, you know, we spent $80 billion last year building data centers around the world. That's like extraordinary, but it's not ever going to be enough. And so we have to think about the ways in which we can, you know, build on more patient capital, think about how you aggregate demand and make sure, but we have to think about each of those pieces of the
And there are so
stack.
Many, like if you look at the pyramid,
right?
It goes from basic connectivity and electricity. 700 million people, by the way, you all know this because you go to all these conferences all year round, but you know, 700 million people who still lack electricity. And then on top of that, you layer the number of people who, you know, don't have good internet access. I mean, there are many barriers to participating in the AI economy, all of which I think are critical to address. And finally, we have just a minute, but I think that's probably enough. A great question from the audience, which is there a metric that best captures what trust means to you when it comes to AI? Can you quantify we're doing okay?
That's a really hard question. You know, you could use the number of users, but I'm not sure that's the best metric because people, you know, we sometimes learn later after technology has been adopted that there's reason to be a little more cautious of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think there is a part of it that is, you know, how many people are using it? Do they feel it is both useful and trustworthy? But it's a really good question. I actually think I need to spend more time thinking about, and I think it's the right question to continue to wrestle with. Actually.
Yeah, because it's, again, to your point about, you know, sort of the squishiness of responsible and trustworthy.
Yeah.
And, you know, the more we get to a place where we say, okay, you know, we're helping a majority of people here, more people are getting access, and we know our trajectory is positive, but I don't know how exactly what that metric would be.
Right.
But Teresa Hutson.
If people have ideas, you know,
yeah,
send them my way.
Means, yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, Teresa Hutson, thank you so much for this. Thanks to all of you.
Thank you.
Thanks to the people watching at home.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
We'll see you again soon.
Thank you.